I've talked with many intelligent atheists, and no matter how deep the conversation goes, it always circles back to the same three questions they have never been able to fully answer. And they aren't abstract questions that don't pertain, these are the core issues that atheist versus Christian debates very often revolve around, and yet many Christians are completely ignoring. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what those three questions are, and why they make atheism an impossible worldview to defend. Let's begin. Let's start with the first question, and honestly, this one doesn't get nearly enough attention, even though it lies under almost everything we take for granted in the modern world. Here it is. How do you account for the universe being intelligible and orderly enough for science to work? Let me take my time and unpack this carefully because it's easy to gloss over how profound this actually is. You see, every time a scientist steps into a laboratory and runs an experiment, every time an engineer designs a bridge, a plane, or a computer chip, every time a doctor relies on decades of accumulated medical research to treat a patient, they are all making an enormous, unspoken assumption. They assume that the universe is fundamentally orderly, consistent, reliable, and intelligible. They assume that the laws of physics and chemistry they discover today will still hold true tomorrow, next year, in 1,000 years, or even across the vast reaches of the cosmos. This foundational assumption is what philosophers call the uniformity of nature. Without this incredibly crucial uniformity, the entire scientific enterprise would collapse overnight. You couldn't repeat experiments and expect consistent results. You couldn't build reliable technology. You can't make accurate predictions about anything. Planes might fall from the sky without warning. Medicines might randomly stop working. Computers and electricity could become unpredictable. The entire foundation of modern civilization, our technology, medicine, transportation, communication, rests on this deep assumption that nature follows stable, discoverable laws. But if atheism is true, if the universe sprang into existence from absolute nothing by nothing for no reason through purely random, blind, unguided chance processes, then why in the world should we expect any order whatsoever? Why shouldn't the universe be total chaos, where the laws of physics shift randomly from moment to moment? Nature has no mind, it has no goals, it has no rationality, it has no preference for order over disorder. It has no obligations to be stable or understandable to human beings. And yet, against all expectation under atheism, the universe is incredibly orderly. The same mathematical constants and equations govern everything from the majestic spiral arms of distant galaxies to the intricate dance of subatomic particles. Mathematics, this purely abstract, non-physical language that exists only in the mind, describes physical reality with unbelievable precision and elegance. Why does it fit so perfectly? Why is the universe not only ordered, but deeply comprehensible to finite, limited human minds? Christians have heard time and time again how science has replaced God, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Science has not only not replaced God, it cannot even function without him. Let's examine the most common atheist objections. Objection number 1, science just works. We don't need to explain why, it's self-evident. And this is classic circular reasoning. You're using the success of science as proof while refusing to provide any foundation for why science should work at all in the first place. Objection number 2, the multiverse theory. There are billions or trillions of universes, and we just happen to live in the one that is orderly. And this approach doesn't solve the problem. It only multiplies the mystery. Where did the multiverse come from? Why do orderly universes exist at all? Why aren't all universes chaotic? It's a special pleading on a cosmic scale. Objection number 3. Evolution trained our brains to recognize patterns in order and consistency. But this only explains human psychology and perception. It does not explain why the order exists objectively in the external world, independent of our minds, waiting to be discovered. And furthermore, evolution doesn't select for truth, it selects for survival. The Christian worldview offers a clear, coherent, and powerful explanation. The universe is intelligible and orderly because it was intentionally created by a rational, intelligent, orderly God who designed it to be knowable by creatures made in his image. That fits the evidence far better. But as soon as we acknowledge this deep order and intelligibility of the universe, it naturally leads us straight into an even more foundational and difficult question. How do you account for the existence and reliability of reason and logic itself? This question takes us even deeper than the last one. The laws of logic are not physical things you can touch, measure, or locate in space. They are immaterial, universal, and transcendent, meaning they are not bound to a certain culture or language or place or time. They apply to all people in all places at all times. They govern all rational thought. The law of non-contradiction, something cannot be and not be at the same time, the law of identity, and the law of excluded middle are foundational to any coherent reasoning. If atheism is true, and reality is ultimately nothing but matter and energy behaving according to blind physical processes, then how do these non-material laws exist? Where do they come from? How are they binding on reality itself? How are they transcendent above every culture, every place, every time? Evolution is often presented as the great explainer, but it creates far more problems than it answers. Natural selection is a blind, unguided process that favors traits which aid survival and reproduction, not truth-seeking. If a false belief helped our ancestors survive and reproduce better than a true one, evolution would select for that false belief. This raises a devastating question for the atheist. Why should we trust our reasoning faculties when they go far beyond basic survival needs and start making grand claims about the nature of reality, morality, God, or ultimate meaning? Even Charles Darwin himself expressed serious private doubts about this very issue. In a letter, he worried that if human reason is the product of such blind evolutionary forces, we might have no reliable ground for trusting its conclusions or deep philosophical and metaphysical questions. You see, order does not naturally arise from non-order. Random, unguided chaos does not spontaneously produce universal, binding, immaterial laws of logic. These laws are discovered by the mind, not invented by societies or cultures. Now here's some common atheist objections. Logic is just a description of how the physical world behaves. Now this reduces logic to something purely material, but logic governs abstract truths, possible worlds, and necessary realities that go far beyond the physical universe. And the law of non-contradiction would still exist, even if every human on Earth died tomorrow. They are not dependent on humans. Logic evolved because it was useful for survival. Usefulness for survival does not guarantee truth, especially when it comes to abstract philosophical reasoning far removed from immediate survival pressures. We simply presuppose that logic works. That's not an explanation. It's an admission that their worldview lacks a foundation for the very tools they use to argue against Christianity. They're just arguing in a circle and begging the question again and again with no coherent foundation. The Christian worldview, on the other hand, can give us a solid, coherent foundation. Logic and reason exist and are reliable because a logical, rational God created a logical universe and endowed us with minds capable of apprehending truth. We can reason because we reflect the rationality of our Creator. We've now seen major problems with the intelligibility of the universe and with reason and logic, but the third question is one that hits us on the deepest emotional level. Last but definitely not least is this question. It's slightly different from the previous two, because while the other two dealt primarily with philosophical issues, this one deals with issues that we see, experience, and feel strongly about every single day. The question is this: how do you account for objective moral duties? We all know what this feels like in real life. When you hear about a child being brutally abused, when you see footage of innocent people being massacred, when a powerful person ruthlessly exploits the weak and vulnerable, something deep inside you rises up with moral outrage. It's not cultural conditioning or personal preference or you disagreeing with their standpoint on life. You feel that it is truly, objectively wrong. If atheism is true, and human beings are nothing more than mere bags of meat, accidental collections of atoms in a cold, indifferent, purposeless universe, then why should any of that matter? Mother Nature does not care about us at all. The cosmos is blind and pitiless. In a purely material world, one arrangement of atoms harming another arrangement of atoms has no real moral significance. It's just physics having a fun time. Yet we all experience objective moral duties, objective moral feelings. We know some actions are genuinely evil, regardless of what any individual, any culture, or any society believes. This moral awareness is deep, universal, and powerful. Evolution cannot adequately ground this. It can explain other things like survival instincts, but it cannot turn those instincts into real, transcendent, objective moral obligations that are binding on all people at all times. Now, some common objections are that morality is just an evolutionary instinct that developed for group survival. This is probably one of the most common, but as we just said, it's not truly objective. It's descriptive of what helps survival, not prescriptive of what we ought to do. And as said before, evolution can produce a false belief in you. So you better be very, very confident that that false belief is not a false belief, because you're basing human lives and just about everything off that belief. Second, society and culture can decide what is moral. Then morality is relative and bound to human decision. One society's greatest virtue can be another society's greatest atrocity, with no higher standard for judge between them. Third, I can live a morally good life without believing in God. This just confuses behavior with a foundation. The question is not whether atheists can act morally, but why moral duties are truly binding if there is no transcendent moral lawgiver, and why we have such a thing as morality at all. Without God, morality ultimately reduces to power, preference, or social contract, and that has terrifying real-world implications. The Christian worldview explains this reality with clarity and power. We have objective moral duties because we are created in the image of a perfectly good and moral God. Our conscience reflects His holy character. So let's bring everything full circle. These three questions: how do you account for the universe being intelligible and orderly enough for science to work? How do you account for the existence and reliability of reason and logic? And how do you account for objective moral duties? Keep surfacing again and again because they strike at the very foundations of reality, knowledge, and human experience. And this is where the real power of these questions comes in. It's not just that atheism struggles to answer these three questions. The deeper issue is that atheism cannot account for them at all without stealing from the Christian worldview. In order to even do science, to reason logically, or to make moral judgments, the atheist must presuppose the very things that only make sense if the Christian God exists. They have to stand on the borrowed capital of Christianity in order to argue against it. Without God, you don't just have unanswered questions, you have an impossible worldview. No matter how hard atheists try, they cannot fully explain or account for any of these three from within a purely materialistic, naturalistic worldview. They rely on science but can't ground it. They use logic but can't justify it. They appeal to morality but have no ultimate foundation. So they are believing in science with no foundation. They are believing in logic with no foundation. They are believing in morality with no foundation. Let's think about this. Believing in universal, immaterial, transcendent laws with no grounding for them, no proof for them, no evidence for them. I think atheists have a sentence for that. Pretty sure they call things like that blind faith. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please make sure to subscribe, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know of any other questions you see being misused a lot as well. Again, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.